Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to do a participatory performance with Michael Rippens. It's called Still Life Live. And we've got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because 2 artists are in the same space. So we've got 9 artists joining him. So we've got Asia Sztencel, Molly Schulman, Alan Nakagawa, Christopher Velasco, Dakota Noot, Paul Outlaw, Este Sanchez, and Fiona Chang. I'm waiting for the artists to come back on with their video. So before we get to that, I will welcome you. This is the last ancillary event for the exhibition Home at Acogedor. And the exhibition opened on September 1st of this year, of this month, and it runs until Saturday, October 3rd. Before I get any further with that, I want to say that this year in the United States, it's the elections in November are even more important. I feel even more important than they've ever been, at least in my life. And I want to encourage everyone who can vote in the US to vote, or if you live abroad, to vote by absentee ballot. If you cannot vote in the US but know people who can, please encourage them to vote. It's really important that our voices are heard. So there's been a lot of programming happening during the exhibition. We've had weekly conversations with artists in the different kind of themes of the exhibition. And on Saturday the 3rd at 3 p.m., we will have a closing panel with Enrique Castrejón, Jody Wood, Nicholas Frisella, and Dulce Soledad Ibarra. And that again will be at 3 p.m. Here on Facebook Live. And 2 other events that are happening before the end of this show is we've got 2 takeovers on Instagram, which is acogedor.space, and that's Jungmook Yi, who's taking over right now until tomorrow. And then Connie Fu will bring us to the end of the exhibition on October 2nd. I have nothing else to say, but thank you, Michael, for this project, and thank you, artists, for being here. And I'll let Michael tell us all about the work.
All right, thanks so much, Nicole, and welcome everybody to the Still Life Live event. Just before we begin, I want to reflect on the fact that we're all connecting a virtual space here, but from the comfort and safety of our own respective homes. So I just want to take a moment to consider the original people who called this land home. For those of us living in Los Angeles, I think that's pretty much all of the participants except for Asia in New York. We acknowledge the native Tongva as the first known inhabitants of this region. But as the exhibition at Acogedor reflects and expands on this kind of larger concept and idea of home, I also want to take the time to acknowledge and aim to uplift those in our community who face the daily hardships of life without the safety and shelter of a permanent, stable home as well. So yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone again for joining us today, the artists who are performing, as well as everyone tuning in on Facebook Live. I'm excited. It's the first time I've done a live event since since quarantine began. So finally, I guess, jumping on that bandwagon. So a little nervous. Please excuse, little things that go wrong. And Nicole already introduced all the participating artists, but I want to thank everyone again for your time and your energies and your physical presence, even though we're all distant, to come together and share this space and action and sharing or discussion. Oh, and of course, Nicole, I want to thank you for putting this whole thing together. And it's just if you haven't had a chance to see the home exhibition yet, I encourage everyone to do so on acogedor.space. It's a really thoughtful and dynamic, kind of like inclusive exhibition that Nicole has put together. And you can read about all the artists and see all the really interesting, thoughtful artwork in the show as well. And Nicole is going to be VJing our Zoom performance today as well. So it's certainly a collaboration between myself, all the other artists on screen with us, and Nicole as well, kind of being puppet master for what we all get to see. So just to provide a little background on the Still Life series, I was first inspired to do this performance work in 2013 after learning about the Standing Man protests in Turkey, in Tahrir Square, and during the Arab Spring kind of uprisings. And it just seemed like an amazingly powerful gesture of an action of one person, and just kind of demonstrated how like this simple kind of like individual act could like inspire others and challenge like established power structures and ultimately affect like positive political and social change. I know I personally always feel, very kind of like sometimes I get to the point I feel just like powerless and I can't affect change, like just being one person. And it was just kind of like an inspiring act, seeing that happen and kind of take off and spread. And so over the years, I've kind of like come back to the work in different places and contexts, and kind of logistically, what I typically do is I hold space for the duration of 1 hour and try to stand as still as possible, and in silence as well. And it's always in public. Most of my work is in the public sphere and interacting and connecting with others in that way. So when LA's stay-at-home orders came down due to coronavirus, kind of started thinking about this work again and how we're not able to go out into the public space. And kind of early on into quarantine, decided to recreate this work, and but from my living room, in front of my window, kind of like looking out into the outside world and recontextualizing the act. And that's the documentation of that work is what Nicole included in the home show. And so what we're doing here today is kind of an extension of that latest iteration of the piece. And so considering, our individual and shared experience, living in quarantine, living through a pandemic, but also it was done before the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor murders, the Black Lives Matter protests. And so it has like a new kind of context now, even only a couple months later. And it's interesting because the roots of this performance were in protest and with trying to challenge the unfair existing power structures and policies. So that's something also, we'll be considering during this action. So we're gonna be starting a 30-minute still life. So it's half the time of what I typically do. But I also, in addition to all the artists joining me on screen, I want to invite everyone watching from home, if you'd like to also silently stand along with us, or sit, however you'd like, you feel comfortable participating. Even if you're not on screen, you can still engage with the work that way. And you can then contribute your experience of the piece during our sharing and discussion time. But at any moment or any time, feel free to type in kind of comments or questions for Nicole or me or any of the other participants, and Nicole will be monitoring those and kind of interjecting them throughout our discussion. And that's my spiel. Nicole, do you have anything to add?
I don't. That was wonderful. I really loved giving tribute to Indigenous people in the land that we now inhabit. I said, let's take it away. Are we ready to perform, guys?
Yeah, so I'm just going to set up, just moving my chair a bit. Also, I think in place, and we'll start just in about a half a minute or so. So when everyone gets set up.
All right, everybody.
All right. Nicole, is everyone looking good?
Everyone's great. I will, once you turn around, I'll let everybody know.
Okay. So I'll see you all in 30 minutes.
Okay, the performance is beginning.
about a half an hour, according to my phone. I want to invite everybody to slowly come back from the performance, and then we'll recollect when you're ready, again in front of your computers and phones, and we'll have a little sharing session.
Whoa.
I'm going to let the people who are connecting with us via Facebook that if you have any questions or comments, there's about a 10-second lag. So if you put it in the comment section for the video, then I can let everyone know what your thoughts are.
Did I get thrown off? No. I made
No,
it.
you're still on.
You were on
Still
the
with
whole
us, Paul.
time.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, there was a technical leap of faith we all took, for sure.
No, you know, at the last minute, I realized the one thing I forgot, which is that Zoom zapped my battery. So I had to run and plug it in power and put on an extension cord out here so that I wouldn't be thrown.
I'm going to plug in right now. Thanks for the reminder.
Okay, welcome back, everyone.
There's Fiona.
A question that Michael brought up that I'd like to pose to everybody is, how did your body feel during that? Were there certain sensations in certain parts of your body that you had never noticed before, or was it all the same?
I felt all kinds of things. I felt my breath. I felt when we ended at the end, when I actually came out of it and moved, I felt my trapezius muscles. I felt my weight shifting in my feet. I felt my right kneecap. I was so worried about locking out my knees. Yeah, I felt my bones sort of sinking down, and then I'd try to lift them back up again.
I also felt really good because I was barefoot on my backyard in New York. So I felt completely connected to the nature. Can you hear me? A little bit. Okay. So maybe I will go grab my head.
Does anyone else want to share how they're feeling now, or something they felt during the last 30 minutes?
Yeah, I thought I was going to die. I don't know how you did this for an hour, because I felt increasing feelings of desperation during it. I kept thinking, well, is it 5 minutes now, or is it 25 minutes now? I had the urge to leap off of my porch. Several. I thought I was going to fall asleep and fall off the porch several times. I was like, it's so hard to stand still and be silent, even though for the past 6 months, I probably have been sitting around silent most of the time, just not standing around. Yeah, it was, I was really hungry when it was over too.
To add to that, I felt almost the opposite. Like it got easier as the time went on. And I was like, whoa, because I had a clock I could sort of see. And so the first 5 minutes were horrible. But then like, I feel like I was at, halfway through and I hadn't even really noticed. And then maybe the last 5 minutes were really hard. But endurance wise, an hour, I think would have been incredibly challenging.
Yeah, I think for me, what happened was, I think first 5-10 minutes, I was okay. I was quiet. I felt like a nice quiet, but then something just started triggering where I started to reminded me of going back to childhood and being scolded, and I had to stay in the corner by myself. And it for some reason, it started like bringing up a lot of that from childhood. And like as time progressed, I was getting more agitated. I couldn't stay still because I was in that mind frame of like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? So, I mean, that's where I was. I don't know about Dakota.
I mean, I'm with Molly. Like, it got easier and easier with it. It reminds me a lot of like yoga, like the exercise, like headspace of it, where you're like silencing, zoning out. Like, it only got hard for me because like Chris was next to me.
Like, I kept on watching him being all quiet, and I was like getting like anxious.
For me, first minute, can you guys hear me well?
Yeah.
First few minutes were difficult since I'm in the backyard and I am surrounded by buildings. So I was trying to find a place where I see more nature. And first 5 minutes it took time to go inward. When I got there, I meditate a lot, so it was very meditative state for me. And I was really enjoying being barefoot, connecting with the ground. So it was with nature, with the grass in my backyard. So it was really nice and relaxing experience for me. And also like discovering nature sounds. I was afraid that it will be loud here or something. Nothing was like that. It was very peaceful. And also like having no mask and breathing for 30 minutes was an amazing experience. And at some point I realized that, wow, I'm outside standing still and I don't have mask, and that was something good.
I'm also outside, which I don't know if I quite thought about where I was standing at the beginning. Because there were some other folks that were talking about. I did feel like this level of agitation come up. Well, it was like this oscillation between agitation and like in silence or internal stillness, and it depended a lot on whether like a fly had landed on me or what was happening to my body in relationship to like these micro sensations that I think like when my mind is very active or focused, it's very easy to ignore. So within the first 5 minutes, I was like, oh, I have to pee. There were flies on my face, there were flies on my ankle. I think something bit me twice, but then there comes a point where my body's like wondering like when's the next fly going to come. And then just feeling sensations of like, oh, my body is itchy, but I can't scratch it, or I shouldn't scratch it. So at one point I tried to breathe and imagine that my breath was scratching the different parts of my body.
Wow.
Yeah, it was interesting to feel like this hyper sensation or awareness of sensation in the body, and know that I wasn't going to respond to it. So there's that like constraint. So that was something that came up.
Yeah, it reminded me something. Like also, I had similar experience going from micro to from the big picture to the small picture to micro. Because on the beginning I was seeing outside and surroundings, and with time I started to see flies. At some point, wind tickled me, and it was like getting into the micro elements of the nature. Yeah, so similar to Sanchez. Yeah.
For me, the 30 minutes passed really is faster than I felt. When Michael says there's a time mark, I felt it's only halfway. I guess I found standing there alone, and I closed my eyes the whole time and counting the breath. So I feel I find my body, I live in my body again. But I also know I'm not alone because I can hear the ambient sound from the screen. So I know you guys still there.
I also, as challenging as I felt it was, I thought when Michael spoke that it was only 15 minutes had passed.
Was it 30 minutes, Nicole? I hope I didn't mess that up. My phone was in my pocket. I wasn't watching the clock, and so it was a surprise when the ringer went off as well.
Yeah, I timed just to make sure because I wanted to make sure I had like everybody in view once you ended.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear kind of the different discomforts people experienced. Certainly, I felt those as well, and yeah, how you decided to either like power through them or accept them. I should have mentioned the bugs beforehand. We went up with like the mosquito spray before we started, but I should have doubled up because they were attacking my legs, trying to ignore them. And then the sweat started dripping down my back because I was standing right directly in the sun. So I was feeling like the sun beating on me. And then some sort of insect. I couldn't tell at first if it was sweat or a bug, but until it started stinging my arm repeatedly. It took every ounce of effort to not try to swat it away. I have a couple bloody little welts there now, but yeah, just trying to kind of like, and then like a breeze would come by, and it would just feel so amazing, and like hit like cool me off by hitting this sweat, and just going from like this like pain and agitation to this like beautiful like peaceful cool feeling just within a matter of seconds, and then back again. What was definitely an experience I was having.
Where are you?
I'm in my backyard.
Where? What country are you in?
I'm in hi Jason. I'm in Los Angeles in the United States of America.
No, so am I. There are no bugs here.
What? Oh my gosh, we have so many bugs. Those mosquitoes are nuts.
Oh wow. I'm like standing in the shade with a cool breeze.
Alan, how was your experience indoors?
Oh, it's great. I could hear all the ambient sounds, which was like the clock. Towards the end, though, all the blood rushing to my hands wasn't painful, but it was kind of uncomfortable. And then I saw a bunch of things I'd like to fix in this part of the house. More things to buy. I like this question that you wrote here about feeling connected to everyone simultaneously. I like that question. That's a complicated question. Are we becoming more adept to connect to people through this technology? Like, has that become easier in the past 6 months? I'm wondering, I'm slightly afraid of that.
It's never easy for me. And I feel the virtual space has very different kind of a time and spatial experience. But in the past 6 months, I also live with my family, so I won't be able to occupy a small space. So the past 30 minutes, it makes me feel I own the space. That's very important. So sharing space physically or virtually, that's a very delicate balance, I think.
A long time ago, I had this argument with a friend. They were, I think, just talking on the phone. And it was first talked about like his new relationship, you know, like he was in a relationship. Oh, this is great. I'm so glad. And then as he talked, because he hadn't been in a relationship in a long time, I actually got angry at him because I felt it wasn't a relationship, that you have to, you've been talking to each other for 6 months and you've never met that person. And then, so we had this conversation. This is like 15 years ago, I had this conversation. And now I would have a completely different reaction to that. And I'm wondering if this past 6 months has put us into a new place, you know? Like maybe we don't want to be with each other. What if we get to that place?
We won't.
We might. What?
This, you know, it's this virtual space is like real estate, in the sense that, like, when I'm doing this, what we're doing today, I'm doing this on my phone because my phone has the best camera.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys are really small, and I have to swipe constantly. I can't get you all at the same time. Mm-hmm. And if I'm on my big computer with like a 15-inch screen, or whatever, 20-inch screen, it's like better real estate. I can see more. You seem more present because you're bigger, but the image isn't as good. So it's like, what neighborhood do you live in virtually?
I got one of these.
Oh.
Christopher, you were doing this. What do you mean?
Oh, I was just being funny because it's like, you know, when, you know, pandemic started, like we were already living together, Dakota and I, so it's like, you know.
I think you're also gesturing when he was saying like doing the task around home, because like we were noticing the bad paint job on our walls.
That's all I was focusing on, was the paint. That before we moved in, they painted it, and I was just critiquing how bad they did the paint job. And because the paint's coming off, so I wanted to like take it off, nitpick at it, you know. Yeah. And then I was telling Dakota, whispering, I'm like, they did a bad paint job the whole time for like 5 minutes. That's like, you know, yeah.
I was sort of struck that I have never done this. I've never thoughtfully stood or sat in silence without motion, ever. And it's wild. I even worked for a model registry at an art school and would help to send the models to the classes, and I knew all about them posing and what were ideal poses, and that they had to take breaks and all of these things, and I heard their horror stories, but I've never done it. And it was less about the pose really for me and more about just even letting my head quiet and then focusing on the noises around me, and sort of having a John Cage moment where there was a symphony of sound that I hadn't really, and my family isn't here, so I'm all alone in my house, which is very rare. Yeah.
Did anybody start, I mean, Michael, you alluded to this, but did anybody else start sweating towards the end? What was that about? Because it's not hot in this room.
I got very warm. I think it's endurance. Like, it was hard work to just stand there. I put my fan on as soon as Michael called the alarm.
Is that typical, Michael?
Yeah, I think your body is working. Your muscles are trying really hard to keep you in place, because you're constantly like micro adjusting. If we feel like we're sitting in one chair like at our desk all day, but we're constantly moving around and changing position, so that we're more comfortable. But if we resist that, I think we're trying hard to like keep it together. So it's like holding a weight up. Like it just gets increasingly harder and harder as time goes by. But kind of going back to like working through that, I was kind of thinking about, I don't know where other people's heads go when they endure this kind of discomfort, but I was definitely trying to stand taller and kind of almost be defiant against it, and also thinking about people in situations who can't do anything to change the discomfort, and kind of like trying to empathize and channel that through my pain, and kind of like letting the thoughts like take over the physical parts for me.
Este, I know you're a dancer. How was this easy for you?
No, I feel like it was very hard. I think it's because I feel comfortable finding stillness and movement. That finding stillness and stillness is like this alternative it's an alternative muscle. So I found myself like wanting to do a lot of like micro adjustments, and like my hand would move every once in a while, and I would become aware of it after it happened. But yeah, I feel like it definitely was not as easy as I thought it would be. But there was something comforting about. There was something comforting about the just having that increased awareness over my body, and then also feeling how it was directly, like its comfort was directly in relationship to the space, and how far I could focus out or in, how friendly the bugs were. Yeah, and it's really easy to get into a space where it was really easy for me to get into like a mind space where it was I could, like, the edges between the external world and the internal world were blurring, especially because I was looking out at like just like a green stretch of like backyard space. So I feel like when like in that blurring, it was easier to come into stillness. But when the attention was like brought back to my body, then like my body felt more called to find stillness and movement than stillness and stillness. But I mean, like, none of us were really still.
Right.
There's like the visual conception of stillness, and like there's like visual stillness, and then there is like being a rock. But you know, where it's like none of us are rocks.
But even a rock is crumbling.
Over time, yeah. I mean, and also like the time frame, like over like, is it an eon or even a couple dozen years, the rock's not in stillness. But yeah. And also just like feeling like, oh well, there's like a whole biological process or like biological movements happening inside. Like my stomach's rumbling, and my like bladder is compressing. But also knowing we're being witnessed, you know, by each other and by other people. I feel like it made me more aware of the visuals, like being still, like the optics of stillness. Even if I wasn't still, like I just had to look still. Yeah, I wonder how other people like experience stillness, like stillness and movement.
I sort of mentioned this before, but I felt like I was moving the whole time. I never felt that I wasn't moving. My weight was shifting. My height would change. My muscles would, you know, give off different sort of feel. Yeah, I never felt that I was still. And then I would sneak movements in. I'd sneak a little finger or a toe lift or something, you know.
My microphone was off, so you guys couldn't hear how squeaky my wood floor is. Paul, with all of your experience in theater and experimental theater, was this very different for you, or have you experienced this time type of experience before?
If I have to be still when I'm working, like if I'm dead on stage, which I have been, it's if you've ever seen me in an Asher Hartman piece, you've seen me dead on stage, and I don't know. That's sort of different because I kind of know what's going to happen, and also maybe while I'm lying dead, people are talking. So I kind of know when that speech is going to end or that scene. So it becomes great. And it's also a chance for me to take a break because usually I'm like going at 180 and it just kind of is a time to come to zero, that kind of stillness. And this was completely different. I mean, I was really aware that even though I had the control that I could walk away, I knew that Michael said, if it's too much, you can walk away. But I didn't want to walk away because I didn't want to be a failure at standing for a half hour. So I just was, you know, observe it, watch it, and just stay there. And I mean, my mind was racing. I would think, you know, if you can be on a treadmill for 30 minutes, why can't you just stand still for 30 minutes? And staring at the Hollywood sign and hearing the beautiful sound. It was a wonderful experience, but the first thought that came to me was it was a kind of desperation that tinged the entire experience. And I'm working on a project now where it has to do with isolation and confinement. So this was very, very helpful for me for that project. But it was not easy. No.
I just didn't want to fall. I thought that'd be kind of embarrassing.
I had a few moments feeling like I could fall, my legs might buckle, or my eyes would close and I would drift. And it was almost scary, honestly.
I was actually really worried about everybody. As much as I was dealing with my own issues, I was freaking out. Like if anyone else was, was getting harmed or, or would pass out or fall over, like I felt really responsible. So certainly kind of like this connection question you brought up, Alan, I did, even though standing alone in my, my yard with like the birds and trees and saw a little mouse scuttle a log, I knew that you all were there with me as well. And I was connected through my, I guess, concern for your well-being. But I'm glad you all made it.
Nicole, how was your experience being the VJ?
I mean, yeah, it was endurance for me in a weird way. At first I felt like I really wanted to give everybody equal time, and then I was like, oh, I want to see where things are, and then that's when I started noticing all of you guys moving. Dakota and Christopher, yeah, you guys were like off the rails. But I could see that you were responding to one another, which was really interesting, because everybody else was like in this expansive, well, a decent sized area, away from other people, and they've also got their sound on, and it sounds like there's nobody, like Molly was saying, her family's not even there. So it was interesting watching you guys kind of feed off one another. That was really interesting. Yeah, and I saw like Este kind of go back and forth. I think I saw Asia kind of shit. Like everybody had their own little private movements that they were doing in order to keep going. But yeah, I mean, I found it really beautiful. I got to kind of go into your worlds. But I also really love the simplicity of the performance piece and just watching everybody together. I think that was kind of the meditative moment for me, where I could just sit. I don't know about other people who were watching, but where you could just kind of sit and take in what was happening and listen to the different sounds.
I mean, yeah, even though I couldn't see it, I knew that we were all kind of doing the same thing together. And it was kind of always been a little bit of fantasy of mine since I started doing this project, of kind of having this, Gumpian moment where people will just start like spontaneously standing quietly next to me without really understanding what's going on. And so thank you all for providing that to me, even in this strange virtual space. And Gumpian's an adjective, right? Pretty sure.
It is now. This reminds me of this piece in Seattle. Has anyone ever seen video of this piece where I think it was part of a public art project? They put all these cameras in the river to document the salmon run and the salmon egg laying eggs. And then they projected that into downtown Seattle on a big screen, and it would play like a clock, have you ever seen that? So strangers would just stop all of a sudden and watch this thing that was happening live somewhere in a river. This piece was kind of like that inverted with no salmon.
I want to give the people on Facebook another moment because we're closing in on our time. If you guys have any questions, there's a lot of support. Christine Shoemaker says so much important insight into the art of standing still. Yeah, it's really been nice to hear everybody's kind of varied but similar experiences. And I think something that I've found really interesting doing things on Zoom, whether it's an event or a class, or even just a meeting, is the intimacy of seeing somebody else's space. That I think doing this piece on Zoom, Michael, is you're asking people to participate with you and just start standing still with you. But at the same time, where we've all, or you all have chosen a space that you want to do this in, and chosen a way that you want to stand, like Este and Asia, stood on their side or with their side facing the camera. And I mean, all being artists and kind of aesthetically thinking about it, but also, there's kind of, I'm assuming, like a subconsciousness of where are you feeling comfortable? Where are you feeling comfortable enough to do this publicly and knowing that it's going to be recorded? And what are you showing to the world? But also there's stuff that you show into the world without, you have to in order to do it this way. That wouldn't have happened if or when you do it live.
What I really like Michael's project is always, his project is always embedded in the everyday life, but also have this question of if the art practice has to connect to the audience. I know the virtual way to do that is that we are setting up a date that every year, September 26th at 1 o'clock, we will stand together without using Zoom or Facebook for the audience. I think that thought of connecting to you, for me, it's enough. I don't need to know or see you standing in your domestic space.
You cut out a little bit, Fiona, but what I'm understanding is you're saying that the connection is just knowing that other people are doing the same thing with you?
Yes, I was thinking about the connection of knowing and also the difference of broadcast or showing this on the just writing a piece of contract, sending to each other. I trust you doing the same thing at the same moment with me. I think that's the most important part to me.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
so being turned away from the camera and trusting that I would hear when everyone was ready to come back, or even trusting that my computer is going to have enough battery to make it through the duration of this performance, and that I would also, my body would also recognize if that was the case when 30 minutes had passed and I wouldn't, and there was a thought that had passed that crossed my mind, like, oh, if my computer dies, I could stand here for hours and not know it. But so anyway, that there were just like things around trust that I felt like were also, that were instigated by just like the trust that went into moving through this whole performance with everyone, and that we would all come back at the same time, that we were all like following the same social rules of like the same social roles that like were laid out for us, and just seeing like with like those seed, with that like thought seed, like thinking of just feeling other ways that like trust, like just other ways that I relate to trust in my personal life. It was interesting, just like how there was this, how it became like this source of investigating like, a personal relationship to trust. And then being in like, yeah, I mean, like we're all in our own, we're doing something that's deeply internal, and everyone has, and people are seeing a small glimpse into our curated intimate lives too. So there's many levels of trust that feels like is being asked of all of us participating in this together. As strangers in some capacity, because I know there are people here that I don't know. Yeah, that was the thought.
Thank you, Este.
Yeah, thanks.
I think we're going to end with that meditation on trust, on trusting people we don't know, trusting people we do know, trusting that things are going to work out. I think that's kind of what we're in the middle of right now. I want to thank all of you for participating. I particularly want to thank Michael Rippens for bringing this project to Acogedor. And then I'm going to end with just reminding you about what's going on. This is the last week of the home exhibition. It's acogedor.space/gallery. That's where the exhibition space is. It'll be up until Saturday the 3rd. And that day we will also have our closing conversation with the artist at 3 p.m. That'll be broadcast here on Facebook. And we have 2 Instagram takeovers. Right now we have Jing Moki, who will be taking over until tomorrow. And then on Tuesday, Connie Fu will bring us to the end of the exhibition. So, oh, and last but definitely not least, vote. If you can vote, vote. Encourage people to vote. This is really important that we do that. Thank you, everyone. We're going to say goodbye to Facebook. Bye, Facebook.
Bye. Thanks, everybody. This was amazing.